So my parents went to college. They were the first in their families. So college was a normalized experience for me. I grew up knowing about college, understanding that that's what was expected of me. That's what you do. Um, my dad teaches at Cal State Long Beach, so I went to campus a lot, and we lived really close to campus. So, but when it came to actually applying for college, I would say my parents put me in the Upward Bound program, and that gave me a lot of exposure to looking at schools and the process of, SATs, ACTs, and college applications. Um, and also, I was in a magnet high school program, so the expectation was that you got A's and B's. If you didn't, you got a progress report sent home, and they were kind of on top of like when to study for the PSAT or or the SAT test and all those things. So I kind of had that kind of support on in high school. I don't feel like I have a real interesting story. It was the thing I was supposed to do. It was not um something that was like a huge dream or a huge oh my god, I hope I do this. It was like I get to it because it's next. And I think it's because it was normalized growing up. And I will say, my parents did a really good job of that. But when it came to actually going to college, paying for college, the support you need in college, I didn't get any of that from them. In fact, I didn't. I was very independent. I moved out when I was 18. I didn't even talk to my parents for a few years, and I worked and paid for college on my own. I just think it's because, as Latinos or Mexican and Mexican Americans, they broke through a certain layer of college, and then they were in a world themselves where they didn't have any help, being professionals and not having other people that look like them around, and they just were very overwhelmed and didn't really go back and give me that support, I guess. And so like I got support from them in that growing up. I understood about college and that was what I needed to do, but I didn't really get financial support or any other mechanisms. And my parents made too much money for me to get need-based grants. So I had to pay for it. And they didn't save money because, I think as Latinos, we tend to not have good finance practices because we just know we don't have money. We just don't have money and we have to operate that way. And I think they definitely made a better income, but for whatever reason, we just didn't have money, like, or the habit of saving. Like, I'm gonna save money for two kids in college. So I kind of feel like I was caught in that gray area as your family is reaching higher mechanisms in society. We kind of don't know how to do everything once we're there. Yeah, so I think as a child, my dad was a really strong enabler in educating me because I went to public school. I lived in California, and we were learning the history of California, and it's not exactly all of the history. It's skewed to just talk about Americans. So my dad was always like giving me other lessons and other history and other books and really teaching me about where I was from culturally, ethnically, and regionally, California being Mexico. So I feel like those types of things were very strong foundations in my own personal education. And then as I moved into college, I really had a strong support by the Latino staff and like advising staff, counselors on campus. Would give me a book grant or would, kind of help me figure out what the heck I was doing because just because you get into school doesn't mean you know how to get out of school. And, and then graduate school was more about I need to check off a certain box in order to get a certain type of management job. And no amount of years in nonprofit work is going to really qualify you for that, even though you have probably the most capacity to do the job. But at the end of the day, other people have a master's degree and you don't. So for me, it was more about formalizing the skill sets that I already had from the workforce and about just being able to check that box off. Um, I feel like that's why we didn't really have a lot of money growing up because, they had a high mortgage payment or rent payment, but we definitely didn't have that experience growing up where it was like, ooh, I went to school to get out of being on the street and X, Y, and Z negative externalities. But that's because my parents, I don't know, man, that was important to them because maybe they had experience. I know my mom graduated a year early from high school because she was always in school. She hated being home, and she did well in school, so she was just like constantly in summer school, constantly in school, avoiding the street or whatever poverty and things in her household. And I think that because they got had those experiences, they made those decisions for us. So we never really had that kind of situation. I will say that being said, though, that doesn't mean I didn't grow up understanding the different backgrounds because the rest of my family did live in those neighborhoods and we did go there to see our family or childcare was there oftentimes. The other thing I think that kind of shaped me was that, I grew up in the 80s and when IRCA, the immigration reform, amnesty reform happened, and a huge part of my dad's work was providing legal services for all of the undocumented that were trying to legalize themselves. And after school, if I didn't have something to do, was playing at his office with office supplies and, desks and hide and seek and all that good stuff. And I played with all the kids, and so I think at a young age, I didn't understand words like amnesty and immigration and undocumented, but it doesn't mean that you don't understand that there's clearly something happening and that although physically you're not different, you're treated different. And so I think those are types of things that I was exposed to as opposed to like, oh man, I better stay in school because I want to avoid X, Y, and Z. So we set our sight on being the first student to go to college. Okay, my parents did that. It improved our lives dramatically as children. I mean, I had opportunities to everything. My parents were like, you're going to spend your summer at the boat club or at something, or like things that I know other people didn't get. But I don't think my parents understood what to do when it came to college because their experience was so different than mine. You know, college was normalized for me, but there wasn't a way to pay for it, So, it's like, does it mean we have it all figured out once we're the first generation? No. And then I didn't even talk about right now, I'm the first generation to study abroad. So you have my parents as the first generation, but I'm the first generation to say, I believe I belong in Peace Corps because I am American still. Whether I like that or not, that's who I am. And why not capitalize on that opportunity, or, the notion to go to Europe or the notion to go to Latin America or wherever it is not what my parents' reality was when they were in college. So, there's that struggle as well. And yeah, I mean, I think that everybody does the best they can given their experience. And my parents taught me what they could from their experience, but oftentimes it wasn't my reality anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think I'm different sometimes in certain ways, and they just don't know what to do with me.
I think you're very different. I love that about you.
It's like, I think I wrestled many years now trying to figure out whether I want children or I feel bad that I don't want children. When the moment we define what education is, we exclude other ways of knowing, and that leaves winners and losers. And I know we need to create a system like say A through G pattern gets you a high school diploma. But what about all of the other types of knowing that don't qualify through all of those categories? And so not to get too philosophical, but it really did impact me and the way we are spreading our westernized education system throughout the world. And that's not like a one size fits all thing for everyone. Not every society needs to function like the United States. Not every society has the same situation. Some societies have extremely connected beliefs to their indigenous history. And how do we respect that when we're all about productivity? Or some societies live in remote regions like Peru in the Andes, and if we're teaching kids how to get jobs that they can only get in Lima, Peru, or the United States, how does that help them in their remote region? So I guess it really, really disturbed me to see that we're really, really commodifying education. It's a business now. And we're trying to make this universal package, and it doesn't fit in every region of the world. Some countries are landlocked. Some countries have very extreme religious views, or some countries have indigenous ways of knowing that they respect. And we're over here saying, none of that works. You have to just buy into this one framework, and it doesn't work. So that's on an international level. But I will share in high school, what really disturbed me was I went to Long Beach Poly High School, which is in what would be considered the ghetto. Um, but they had a magnet program there as well. So you had this fusion of what they call regular scheduled kids that go there because that's the districted school. So they're from the neighborhood. And then you had the magnet program kids who came from all over Long Beach and wealthier communities in Long Beach. And there was this segregation going on. And I remember being a senior in high school, and one of my friends, who's another Latino student, he had asked me for help. And he said, "Can you help me? I'm trying to work on this research paper for my English class." So I said, "Okay, let's meet at the library at X time." And now I had met him because when my parents did get divorced in high school, I had to leave my school and, move. And I was out for like a semester at a different school. And when I came back to Poly, there was no room for me in the magnet program. So they put me in what they called regular scheduled honors program. That year was a mind opening, eye opening experience because what they called regular scheduled honors was not that accelerated. The books were falling apart, the tiles were coming off the ceiling of the classroom. It was just a very different experience than being in this new building that has an elevator and air conditioning and all of the resources you need in the magnet program. So that was very disturbing. Now, to go back to Tony, when I sat down with him, I said, "Where's your outline?" He didn't know what an outline was. We started to talk about paragraph structure, a 5 paragraph essay, or are you doing like a 5 page essay? What is it that you're doing? And he had no idea what I was talking about. And it just made me really, really angry that I could be standing in line at lunch and the kid next to me doesn't have the same education experience as me, and why the hell not? And so I think that was, I was like 17 and I was really pissed off when I realized that Tony didn't get the same something I learned as a freshman, he was trying to learn as a senior and still didn't know how to do it. So what does that say about his college opportunities? I really think we need to revisit this generalized A through G pattern, this assumption that we're preparing everyone for college. And I know it has a slippery slope because my parents grew up in a time where they were being tracked. My father was about to head off for a career in auto shop, which there's nothing wrong with, but he happened to be pulled aside by this African American professor that happened to go to school to recruit college students for Cal State Long Beach. And that's why he went to Cal State Long Beach. Had that not happened, he would have been in auto shop. And so I understand that, like, we can't just generalize and be like, you're Mexican, so you're going to go do these things, and your family's poor, so you're going to just learn how to do, this service work. But I just feel like there's got to be a way to approach students on an individual basis, figure out what they're talented and excited about, and help them to get on a path to that. And it may not always be college. I think a lot of when I was applying for school factored in how am I paying for it. Because my parents were like, I don't have any money to pay for it, but you're going to go. Well, they're speaking to their experience. They were so freaking poor that they got everything paid for. And I didn't have that situation. They were like, you make money. You need to pay for your own education. So that meant that I worked 45 hours a week and went to school full time. And so I just wish I understood that, like, I could have applied for any school I wanted. I could have really, really applied more to scholarships to buffer the cost. And I wish I would have understood that I could have also applied to be, what do you call it? When you're autonomous or you're independent. You're because your first few years in college, you're affiliated to your parents' income. And I could have filed something that said, I don't even speak to my parents.
To become an independent, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to do those things. So I limited myself to just Cal State Long Beach. And the reason why I had a hard time finishing in 4 years was because I went to the same school that my parents went to. And I had more independence and identity when I was in high school than on campus. Everyone knew who I was, and I was the daughter of so and so. It just made me not want to go because I was really angry also at my dad at the time. So I just didn't want to be there. Went to other campuses. So those types of things I think I wish I understood was that not to limit yourself and not limit yourself, like have really, really, really strong ideas and passion and dreams and hold on to them. Even if they seem ridiculous and unachievable, because if you really, really want something, you'll figure out how to do it. And so a lot of times we have this negative self-talk where we're like, oh, as soon as we start to have the idea of what we want, well, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. And it's not. So I would say, don't limit yourself and keep dreaming. The other thing is about college is you really need to do the work in high school in order to be ready for college. So, if you're not taking high school seriously, you're going to have a really hard time in college. And it doesn't mean that you can't do it and you're not smart enough. It just means you're going to end up at community college for a while and you may get exhausted and quit. So take advantage of the free education you've got now. Try to sign up for as much tutoring or find a counselor, somebody that gets you and that has an open door policy, and visit them all the time and ask them questions. I know that's how I got through undergrad is I had maybe 3 different women in my life that I could just talk to and be like, hey, I need to get this class fixed, or I need to get this teacher won't help me with this, and so find somebody on campus that supports you, and then also um, it's hard. It's hard work. It's not easy, and so you just have to suck it up and get through it and know that it's only a few years and you'll be done and you'll be in a better position in life to enjoy your life, to maybe help your family, to do whatever it is you want to do. But it's hard the first few years. Just know that so that you can accept it and then you can be like, all right, so I don't have a life for a couple years, or but it's easier once you're done. Life is, I think, a little easier. I think so much of us we put pressure on what we want and what we're supposed to be and do, and that's a very sick thing that we have in the U.S. We are what our profession is, and that's really not true. But what I would say is that you really should be picking off what you don't like by trying things. So, volunteer. And then guess what? You're like, yeah, I really don't like animals, or I hate children, or whatever it is you figure out. But you get to know who you are. You gain experience. You get in awkward situations and you figure it out, and you build relationships and network that way. And then when you want a job, or some opportunity comes your way, it's because you've been putting yourself out there. And I've always found work that way. And people are like, you're lucky. And I'm like, no, I just work a lot and I do a lot. And I know it seems like I just said you're not going to have time, but you need to make time to volunteer and go with what you're interested in. And then you start to figure out what you like and don't like. What else would I say about college? Meet with your advisor every semester. I meet with my advisor every month. I still do. And you know what? It helps me. We fix my resume. She says, hey, I got some money for you for a book grant. Or, like they don't forget you that way because you're always in their office. So once a month, meet with your advisor. It could be about, I have to take science. I suck at it. What's the best teacher for it? You know what I mean? It could be about anything. I still do. I meet with my advisor here in grad school every month, whether she likes it or not. I think that, and this is especially for women, for Latinas, I think that, you know, oftentimes there's a desire to go to school, but then we have these expectations or even our own personal desire to also have a family. And I don't think we've learned oftentimes how to balance both of those things. And I think that it's because we don't talk about it. I think we need to figure out if that's something you want in your life or not. And if it is, be honest about it so you make room for it. And if it isn't, be honest about that so that you don't have to feel bad for it. I personally have wrestled with that. And I see the world differently than the rest of my family or than my parents. And it's okay, to be like, I don't need to have children. Or guess what? I really do want to be a mother and a wife. But you got to think about those things too while you're navigating school. If you want to be a mother and a wife, you need to find somebody that supports you to your dreams to go to college. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And also, like, the higher up we go, whether it's in our job, whether it's a private school versus a public school or graduate school, know that you're going to feel like you're alone a lot or like you're the one brown person in the group. And it's not a good feeling a lot of times. And sometimes you're just over it. But, I just want people to be a little more prepared for that because it's a culture shock. Is the answer to run away from it? No, but it's reality. And if more of us keep doing this, then it won't be that way someday for other students. And I think that's really important because otherwise, we don't have a seat at the table, when decisions are made because we haven't done the education route. We haven't gone up the job ladder to be there. And so, I mean, I just made a decision that I want to be one of those people. And, I hope other people do too. But as women, it's very important to think about whether you want a partner and you want a family and by when so you can start to factor that in.